Hi everyone and welcome to Ferryhill Town Council Chambers. We're delighted to be here and I'm delighted to be joined by my friend Angus, who is the Mayor of Ferryhill and the Chair of Ferryhill Town Council.
You got it.
You got
it that time.
Got that the right way around. And it's great to be spending some time with you. It's great to be in the main chamber.
Council chamber.
Council chamber, yeah. So it's great to be here, and we're going to have a chat about you and your story. So thanks very much for giving us your time. So
Pleasure.
I suppose the first question is, where did it all begin, and what led a young Angus into here? How did you get here?
Thank you for having me. That's the first thing I need to say. As a matter of fact, it's actually a privilege to do this for me. In whatever way, I've never done anything like this before in my life, but I've never been a mayor or chair of a council before in my life, so perhaps we'll return to that. But what led to this, what the young Angus, not a hope in the world would the young Angus ever have considered this. Even though I was surrounded by politics, my dad was very political, my mum was as well. My dad was a county councillor briefly. So that was there, but it wasn't my main focus as a young person. It really wasn't as a child. It was sports, telly, and possibly the things that any normal or any child would be involved in, their particular passions. It doesn't have to be sports, it can be whatever else. Even the young man Angus would never have considered this. I was doing what most kids, I think, were doing, most young people were doing, which was socialising to whatever level that was possible. I think if I can sort of come sort of immediately into the mental health journey, perhaps we'll sort of go in and out of that as you ask questions. But at the time, obviously, I was enjoying myself. I had a good bunch of friends from school. That's a different story as well. And locally, where I was in North Wales, Deeside. And Chester and Liverpool, family in Liverpool. So I was concentrating on having a good time. That's what I did. But what I didn't realise at that time was that when I wasn't having a good time, but I was still doing what I was doing, then that was probably quite different to other people. Not exclusively, but probably quite different to others, because I had major crashes. And I just retreated into myself and did what a lot of people do. I didn't seek any support or help, because that not only was not available, but it's not what you did. It's not what men did. And I think that picture, and major crashes, by the way, huge, when I think about them. So then I recovered, and you have an internal conversation. You do what you need to do in life in order to be able to continue. And again, that's not something that everybody has the ability to do, and I'm eminently conscious about that. But the structure I was given when I went to the school I went to has enabled me to keep going. And that was something, your parents tell you to do. It's something that I knew how to do. But my God, was that a journey. It really was a journey. And I think that journey has continued. So to answer your question directly, the young Angus would not have had a clue. And actually, it wasn't just being a young person. That person as a middle-aged man, that person as a father, that person as someone who has lived all over the northeast would not have countenanced this. It's been coming closer, but it's never been something in my mind. Perhaps a return to how this has happened at another stage. Yeah. So I'm sorry about being so circuitous about what the way I've come here, but it is the way. I think the crucial thing was, perhaps going back, was that I was conscious that both my parents were political. I didn't share the same politics, but that doesn't matter. Yeah. That's not what we're here for, because I love them and miss them.
Great, thanks, mate. And you've had a varied career, is that right? A teacher, I believe?
Yeah, a time. One of the crashes I had, I will come back to teaching, one of the crashes I had was in I'm reflecting on them now, you know what they were at the time, and up until very recently I didn't really know what they were. But I dragged myself out of them, and one of them in particular was central in becoming a teacher, because I decided, right, I've got some things I gained from school qualifications. If I'd got one more A-level, I'd have been in the army as an officer. But that, I don't regret that now. I perhaps did at the time. But I'd had a crash, pulled myself out of it, and I decided, right, I'm going to go to university. And I did. I didn't have to have, I just had an interview and had to write an essay. That was the time it was. Well, I went there. First year I failed. Retook, second year, third year, fine, and flew it. And then I went to London to do a postgraduate course. Again, not something I'd ever considered before. I was on a wave, basically. And then at the end of that, I didn't have a job. It's one of the paradoxes about, doing such high qualifications. You don't often get a job at the end of it. I was one of those. Anyway, someone came in one day and said, "You can teach, can't you?" I was like, I've never done it before. So I didn't follow a formal route to teaching. It was an informal route. And I started in some private colleges in London. But then I quickly fell into it happily, and it was the happiest working time of working life. I have the utmost respect for teachers who really, really teach. I was teaching. I'm not going to have anybody taken that away from me, but I wasn't professionally trained. But I did manage, and this is the bottom line, I think, to teaching is results. I'm probably not going to be popular among many teachers for that, but that's not the point. What I did for the kids was get results to them. And that's what I'm proud of. I came to the Northeast, and that's another story in its own right, but I came to the Northeast and decided I wasn't going to teach because I did not have the qualifications that were absolutely necessary to work in the state school system. And I decided to go into welfare because I was always quite good at that. And that's where I was for 15, 20 years in Newcastle at a very large school, where I met a lot of young people with mental health issues, with traumas in their life that have shaped some of their outlooks and attitudes, and certainly have shaped their families as well. And they're the ones I had great empathy for. Is that the right word? Sympathy, maybe. Because something registered in me about them. I understood I have no idea why I understood, but I did not understand where they came from. But I understood what they were going through. So yes, I was a teacher, and then I worked in welfare in schools. That was wonderful. And then things happened to me, and my mental health crashed. I left that employment and I came to Bishop Auckland and then Ferryhill. And then I applied for another job, actually, when I was at my lowest point. Yeah. And bizarrely, I got it. And so I'm now a civil servant. I'm not going to say where I work. But basically, that's what I do. And I've got a year and a half left till retirement. And I cannot wait.
Think about what you did that kept you well, or do you think about what happened in life that caused you challenges? Because as blokes, we don't see a lot of that with the men that we work with. We don't see a lot of guys thinking back and thinking, okay, I know that this keeps me well and this is good for me and this is probably not as good and not good for me. So do you ever reflect back on your working career?
I do now. I've always reflected back anyway. It's something that I've done, and it seemed to be something that, right, but I didn't reflect back and think, well, why did I do that? Why did I have that crash? Why did I have that meltdown? Why did I have that difficulty with interpersonal relationships? I didn't seek the source of that. They were there. I just happened. I had been trained, in a sense, when I went to boarding school, to be able to deal with that. So there was a structure behind me that enabled me to progress and move on with that. My story in terms of the major reflection is not something, and I think I need to say this, my story I'm about to tell you is not probably, I think almost definitely, where the majority of people, men, who I'm talking to, have experience. And I think that sort of difference is crucial. I mean, this started when I had 5 seizures. I had 5 seizures in 2022. First one was August 2022. The last 3 in one night were in December 2022. So it'll be my 3rd anniversary of the last ones. Then I was in a mess, an absolute mess. Seizures do this to you. They were called tonic-clonic. Well, you nearly died, basically. So what the effect of that, I don't need to go on anything else, but they were profound. So I am epileptic as well. So even though my seizures are under control by medication, I've not had one since, I don't think I will, but you can never say never. But what that did, crucially, and this is where it's relevant, is that those seizures, either physically, neurologically maybe, but certainly psychologically, stripped away all of life's defences that I had built around me. I used to call them, before this, I used to call them my armour. We've all got armour, and you know that armour is derived, so the vulnerable inner person, we're all vulnerable. Sorry for looking at the camera, folks, but we are. Every single human being, irrespective of gender, sex, or whoever, has a vulnerability, and that's a child's vulnerability. But we protect ourselves, and that's a natural thing as well. Sometimes we forget about that protection and where our behaviour as a consequence derives from, but we do have that armour. When I had the seizures, all of that was stripped away. I think it was anyway. There were probably some remnants here and there. And that was not only interesting, but it caused me to reflect. I was majorly depressed. There's no question about that. That was, and when I look back at my life, I was probably depressed so much of that as well. Given the things that I reflected on emerging. But what I did was, that physical reality, neurological reality, led to some major psychological reflection and issues. I went to the doctor and I said, right, I decided, right, this is the time that I am going to go to the doctor and get everything I need. I bullied him, I'll be honest. I said that I want this check and I want this physically, this and this, because they'd all bugged me for my life. The biggest thing the change was in terms of that was when I was a kid, I was told I had catarrh. I don't know whether anybody's ever heard of that in their life, but it's snotty, basically, I was bullied about that at school. The bullying didn't go on for long, and I'm not going to get into that, but I was, no question about it, and it really, really hurt. But then when I went to the doctor, I said, look, I've got this. He said, oh, that's rhinitis. I said, is it? I've just told I had catarrh. And he said, well, take this pill. And also have this nose spray. My God, I have not had a snotty nose ever since. So that relieved part of my sort of, my psychology as a child, it helped. But the crucial one, apart from rhinitis, psoriasis, and all the things I sort of suspected, but he said, right, those are there, put them away. I said, I also want to be assessed for autism. And he said, you want to be assessed for that as well? I said, yeah. And he said, well, why? I said, because I'm seeing traits in me that my partner, who works with autistic young people, that she talks about, and also things that I have now dragged from my childhood because of the reflection I was going through because of the seizures, that resonate, absolutely resonate. Anyway, 2.5 years later, I'm diagnosed as autistic. So that is, I don't look autistic, and I know that's something I shouldn't say. And there'll be autistic people out there saying, what are you saying that for? Well, because you have to have some degree of understanding how people perceive you. That's what works for me. And there's no question that people incorrectly, but I'm not going to say they're wrong because that's their own experience in life, but they do look at you, well, you don't look autistic. Well, no, I don't, but that's because I don't do the things that a lot of autistic people do and should be happy to do without challenging. What I was talking about was my autism diagnosis, and that it wasn't a surprise to me. Because when 2.5 years after I said to the doctor I want to be assessed for it, I shouldn't say bullying, I didn't bully the doctor, I pressed him. And I wish more people would do that as well, because they can get more out of the doctor than they normally would. It's about taking control of the system for me. Anyway, so 2.5 years later I was assessed. The assessment took 6 months in total. and it was rigorous. So I have all of the standard traits of an autistic person. And being autistic, you become very, very keenly aware that what you have are traits that are shared by all other autistic people. But you have them in different volumes or amounts for each trait. The traits that I have are incredibly well hidden. And that's because I've had 60 odd years, if not slightly more, I'm 64 at the moment. I've had 60 odd years at least of hiding those. It's called masking. What I am is someone who maybe should have done when they were younger, who could have done when they're younger, had the services been available. The crucial thing now is that I have, before I was diagnosed as autistic, took advice. I referred myself to talking therapies twice. It didn't always work for me. There were experiences I had and it was largely stress that I was under as well, very profound and severe stress. I know that now. I think there's a link between stress and the seizures I had, but a link, maybe not the cause. But I self-referred. I was also referred by work. And you know, I think offloading, at least initially, was the thing that I did most. And I usually come out of those sessions, including PTSD. I've definitely got that. Mini traumas. You know, not someone losing their arm in war. That's not the only way you have traumas. It's profoundly serious. But we have life's mini traumas as well, from childhood all the way through adulthood. And they have a cumulative effect on yourself. And they definitely have with me. So when I was younger, you definitely couldn't go someone. You'd speak to your family, you'd speak to someone, but we're men, and men did not speak to people, and men did not speak to family unless they had an exceptional family. And most men now, I imagine, maybe don't speak to families. No insult to do with the family, but men are in a position, through stereotypes, through upbringing, through culture, through whatever reason, because of the way they were, are in positions now when it's still very difficult. But when I did, it had some effect. Because I've taught constantly now for 5, maybe 6 years. And it has been beneficial. One other little story. One of the fun bits for me, and this does have relevance, because one of the fun bits for me was they tried, because, you know, the standard counselling, whether it was, I don't know what it was it Freudian, was it Jungian, I don't know, I had to look into it. But it, you know, largely didn't work. And that sort of suggests that it's not worth talking. It absolutely is worth talking. People should understand that, because as soon as you open up, then you can do an offloading, and it does open up other opportunities for you to go somewhere to get the help that you actually need. You've got to persist along with it. One of the fun things was when I was living in North Shields, I was asked whether I want to do a thing called EMDR. I think that's the right one. And it's an odd one, but you know what? It actually had more positive outcomes. It didn't cure me. I don't think we should look for cures as in mental health. Really, I don't think they're there, because you know, unless we absolutely need those to sort out a very, very big problem. But EMDR, I'm not going to describe the whole process, but it's odd. You've got to develop a rhythm, physical rhythm, and keep that going, and that gets you into a sort of a state of mind, like a not a dream. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, whatever. But it gets you into a state of mind, a fluidity in your thinking and whatever else. And then you're asked questions by your therapist, who may be in the room or remotely. It was remote at the time, because I think it was early COVID. And what one of the things was that I was, what had been found out through my stress therapy was that there were things that happened in my life that still haunt me. But I don't mean, you know, some sort of big scary haunting. It just haunted. They keep on coming back. Things from school and you know, physically abusive teachers. There was one. I'm not going to go into names or anything else, but I couldn't think then of a day that he didn't return into my mind. It involved sporting implements, let's say, and not nice. And I wasn't the only one either. I know that's something that men say, but I wasn't, and I've shared these stories because you do doubt yourself sometimes. So those particular incidents, the therapist said, "Well, can you go back to those?" Excuse me, and I did, because inevitably, where those things occur, you have a memory of. But what this MDR process did was allow me to go back to actually the point at which it happened and concentrate on that point. But the really, really interesting thing was, so instead of being bent over a table, this sounds like it's leading to something really, really bad, but it was, because I'd been with a cricket bat. Not badly, but I was a kid. I was 11 or 12. So instead of being there, the victim, I was picturing myself up there looking down on that. And I'd never been there before. I'd always been bent over a table with this abusive man, whacking me with a cricket bat over my arse. So standing above it meant that you weren't necessarily there being the victim. You were viewing it. Has that changed your mind about that? I think so. I think it has. The other one, and I've got to tell you this one as well. What was it? Yes, when my mum was posted to the Isle of Man. She was in the army. Did 22 years. She was a remarkable woman. And we moved to the Isle of Man, and both my parents worked. My dad was an accountant there, stroke butcher. What a weird thing that was. But I do get my shifting around from my dad. But when I went to a nursery school, so they sent me to a nursery school in Douglas, the Isle of Man. I've always had unusual feeding habits, eating habits. I now know why they are there. It's a sensory thing, being autistic and whatever else. But it was a textural thing. Meat, not a hope in hell, particularly after school food. But at that time, all I would eat was bread and butter. That's it. Or at least all I'd eat at that place was bread and butter, because that's all that was offered, apart from very ropey meat. And I just couldn't eat that. So I didn't, and I said, I'm not going to. Well, the teacher took me into his office, I think with someone else there, although I can't remember the other person, but this definitely happened, and he threatened me with the birch. The birch was a thing in the Isle of Man they used to punish children at whatever age. So I was threatened with the birch because I wouldn't eat as they thought I should eat. So again, I'd identified that to the therapist before I had EMDR, but at EMDR, a different therapist said, well, do you want to go back to there? Oh my God, I traced, during this journey, I'm a geographer, by training and whatever else, so direction means a lot to me, and space means a lot to me as well. But I actually walked hand in hand with my mum, who took me there every day. I walked with her along a street, round a corner, and faced this nursery school. And then the door opened, and I walked up it with my mum, and then we went into the office where this had occurred. Now, the skeptic in me says I created that. But actually it doesn't matter whether I created that at all. What had happened, and I don't think I did create it, but that's open to analysis or whatever else. But what that did again was help me as an adult to face what had happened as a child. I was definitely threatened with the birch. Mm-hmm. So it took me to that place. So maybe EMDR did have more of a profound effect on my self-reflection than I'd originally thought, but maybe as well, because I was fascinated by that, absolutely fascinated. It was so interesting that I could go on that little mini journey of myself. So it put it in a place that didn't have before. So the reflection that I did certainly helped in some ways. But when those seizures happened and all of that defence was stripped away, that was when I did the deep self-reflection, because all of the defences that I'd built around me had been stripped away. And I'm still in the process of coming through that now, absolutely in the process. But I would not have been in this place, I would not be here as Mayor of Ferryhill, Chair of the Council, had I not gone through that reflection closer. I would still be crashing, having a good time, or developing relationships, or what I have been doing throughout my life. I would still be doing that had I not had those seizures. But the big message is, don't go through that process of you can't choose to have a seizure or not. There's no need to go through that process to be able to open up. You can do it anyway. And even if you are halfway thinking about it, just dive in. You can always pull out.
You talk there about going through the seizures, which, as you say, and I think you put it really well, that we don't need to wait for that crisis, if that's the right word, physical health crisis, mental health crisis, before we seek help. I think that's a really valuable, important lesson to learn. But prior to that, I'm hearing some acceptance of mental health and managing your mental health now. But prior to that, how did you manage your well-being? What did you do to look after yourself prior to the crashes where you knew you had to?
Yeah.
When it was optional almost, because there wasn't that crisis moment, how would you manage it?
See, I wasn't. Yeah, it's a good question, because you know that the idea of well-being is conceptually new. It's not something we were aware about, or I was aware about when I was younger. You did what you did. Maybe some people would characterise it as that. I don't know, but without those definitions around me, you know, as I said, I had crashes. I had daily mini traumas. I had some major traumas as well, psychological traumas. What I did, there were several ways that I did it, that I looked after myself. But I didn't think they were look after myself. They were my passions. And passions come in all sorts of different forms. And again, I go back to school, you know, so much of our lives is formed by school. And one thing that my school definitely did for me, apart from having some, actually no, not some, a very, very small amounts of abusive teachers, the rest were fantastic. They really were. I had a whale of a time at school, really was good. And I don't regret it at all, and I don't characterise school still going, I don't characterise the school as being poor, but those teachers were bad. Anyway, cricket, hockey, rugby, football, swimming, all of those were absolute passions of mine, and I did very, very well with them. I didn't do well academically at all. Well, it's relative terms, but I was awarded, you know, school awards for being a good cricketer. I got 9 wickets once, 9 wickets in one innings. Not many people can do that, can they? I was a good hockey player, very good. I was in the school first team from year 11 onwards. What would be year 11? Today, I can't play it anymore, but cricket's gone through my whole life. I was taken away by the school on adventurous training exercises. It was a military school, so we played with guns. That sounds bad, doesn't it? You know, but really, it's under very controlled circumstances, and rightly so. Don't play with guns, folks. But you know, so all of these were exciting things. Perhaps the biggest thing that I have taken with me through my whole life, and I need to get back into it for various reasons I have not fully done yet, was hills. Walking up hills, space, freedom, discovering and having to emphasise that you are that big in this world. You are a single person who is that big. You're tiny, and when the sky is there, you become, what am I doing that big? You become even tinier, and then if you look into the night sky, you're dust, and actually we are dust. God, I'm getting a bit more profound now. But we are. That's the reality. So what those walks up hills did me in groups, and you can and should if you want to. That's the way you do it. But I was seeking solitude for the reasons I now know. But walking up that hill for me was absolutely every single stress, worry, concern was stripped away completely. And it was, I wouldn't say I was smiling all the way up it, but I did, for a lot of the time. There were times when I had to use sort of, when snow came down or it was absolutely leathering down with rain or whatever else, then you have to sort of dig deep into yourself to get yourself through that, because there are dangerous moments. But again, I was trained in that. So that absolutely was, and all the other things I've mentioned, was self-care, because it relieved some of the pressures and stresses that I was building up. I didn't know it was self-care. That's the crucial thing. So, if you're not comfortable talking to begin with, get yourself up a hill. Go out for a walk with someone. Get a dog, treat them well, and walk. I do that. I've got a dog. That gets me out every day. He's a pain in the arse a lot of the time, but he's a wonderful dog. And I walk him. And that gets me out. And my sort of fitness battle, which I'm winning at the moment, he has been central in helping with that. Now, that is self-care, because you're out of the house, because you're responsible for someone else. Profoundly so. I'm responsible for my son, even though he's 22. I'm not going to talk much about him because he wouldn't want me to. But I learned so much from him. I really do. But self-care. So now, I'm conscious that it's self-care because there's a name for it, and that name is important because it means that you can happily talk to other people about it. And if you can't, then just do the things that make you feel better. You don't have to walk, but following a passion is about self-care as well, because it takes you away, often, not always, from daily worries and concerns. Read. I read. I read every day. Reading has been such an important thing in my life. And again, you're concentrating on something that you wouldn't have your mind spinning around about. And I don't read a lot. I read little bits every night, or on the loo. It's a man thing. So all of those things help take you away from your daily stresses and worries and concerns. They do for me. It may not be for you, but a passion, a hobby. Go and count trains. You know what I mean? Don't, whatever makes you happy, whatever makes you smile, whatever makes you feel part or apart, whatever it works, but look after yourselves. And I haven't all my life, I really haven't. And I haven't lately, but I know I've got somewhere to go when I need to, and it's familiarising yourself with that. So, look, I'm giving a lot of advice here, and I'm sorry, it's not for everybody, but the reality is that's what's helped me. And if I can share those possibilities with other men, actually other people, but other men in this circumstance, then sod it, I'm doing it. There is one big community. When we talk about Ferryhill, we're talking about everybody in the town. And that's not necessarily the way. Something we like talking about as councillors and people within a community, the community of Ferryhill. Well, that exists. It definitely exists. But equally within Ferryhill, like other communities, but equally within Ferryhill, there are lots of other different communities. There's the church communities. There's the Methodist Church, there's the Catholic Church at the bottom on Dean Road, the St Luke's on Church Lane. All of those have their own communities that function almost separately to Ferryhill, but equally they reach out as volunteers or other things to do it. I'm going to go to the Methodist chapels Friday night, Friday afternoon or Friday morning get together. I'll probably have a coffee and a chat. And I've learned something from that. But the people going there, they're mostly women. But that doesn't mean anything other than they're mostly women, but that I can learn from them and they will give help to other parts of the community. But there's pub communities. Every pub have its regulars. And a lot of men in the pubs talk. I wish they'd talk a little bit more about themselves and not maybe the things that... I'm a football fan, for God's sake, but there's more to football in life, That's going to put footballers off me, isn't it? But whatever. But, there are opportunities for men in particular to talk in this town. There are male communities. There are football teams. How many football teams in this town? There's at least four clubs. And I know that Kev, you've been in a football club. I'm not going to say what you said about your contribution towards it.
Legendary status.
Not what you said to me, mate. But I'm sure that you were. I'm sure that that you contributed. But everyone contributes in some way and volunteers. But equally, it's an avenue where you can share with, and particularly now, for God's sake, folks, men. Now is the chance as men to talk to other men about stuff that happens, because it's what we're doing, and if it's needed, do it. Use your community, your personal communities, to do it if that's what's out there. Or another community you may join in Ferryhill, be part of. So there are many communities in Ferryhill that you have the opportunity to be part of or are already part of. So as a community, I've got no doubt that we talk in large sense. A lot of that goes on social media. That's possibly, and actually social media, Facebook, which is the dominant one, I think, that can be a very, very positive force as well. So some of the groups that are in Ferryhill, join. If they're well managed, if they're not allowed to be toxic, then join those, because they can be a supportive community. And God knows, I have chosen groups that have certainly helped my mental health by sharing my concerns. There's probably groups around stress out there. There really is. Access what works for you. Ferryhill is a story that has a deep, deep, deep history, a story of pride. And I think one of the things that I need to say now is that Ferryhill's major piece of history was mining. It really was. It was mining. Dean and Chapter closed in 1966. Maidstone a little bit later, I think, the two big collieries around here. And this has taken nothing away from women who were a major part of the community, but there was that separation there. There really was up till that moment, and thankfully that separation has gone, or is going. There are still remnants of that traditional type of familial and community split. But, these were equal of the days when the pits were open, where women were not allowed in pubs, where men were uniquely in pubs, or women had their own rooms in a pub. But men used to go and talk in the pubs. Whether they talked about the things that we want people to talk about now, I'm not sure. But when those pits closed, and this is a commonality across the whole of South Durham, the whole of the North East Coalfield, Nottinghamshire, North Wales, South Wales, Lancashire, wherever those Cumbria, people forget about those. Southern Scotland, I'm a geographer now, forgive me. But wherever those industries contracted and then closed, left men, families as well, of course, and women as well, but fundamentally men without a job, without traditional things that their parents did. And I can only imagine how that affected. Actually, what am I talking about? I can imagine, because my dad went through it. But coming back to this, that community was riven apart. It's rebuilt itself in a different way, but it still resonates with people. But what the men, particularly, because that's what we're here to talk about, went through at those times, I can only imagine. I really can. And we don't want that to happen again. Has my life been chaotic?
Do you deal with it better as opposed to trying to control the uncontrollable sometimes?
I think the thing about social media, I can concentrate on that because I can, by walking away. This is a difficult one because there are so many variables in our lives, and you talk about chaos in our lives, and it's when those variables, the things we can't control, or the things that happen to us, or we embrace, or whatever else, or happen to us, or we have chosen to happen. When those become out of balance, that's when the chaos ensues, and that's when often our mental health deteriorates, and we have to find ways of coping that. And that is stressful in its own way. In a council chamber, you can just about control what happens. So in here, there is usually someone in control. With me, at the moment, it's me when in council chamber. But it's when you are outside of the chamber and when we're in the chamber, we're trying to help people at the same time. It's just in a very, very more organised way, and that's democracy. But it's when the things that you can't control that will have an effect on you. I mean, there are councillors that I've met who have spent decades picking up litter. They've spent decades referring on to council the complaints about litter, about dog poo, about all the things that are aired doing that. And you know what? Those people are just remarkable. Those volunteers, those councillors are remarkable because they cannot say what they think and feel. They just cannot because they are serving people. I'm not suggesting for a second that they want to denigrate these people, but the amount of pressure that is put on them by the sheer volume of those things is stressful. These people deal with their stress in their own ways. And perhaps they just deal with stress in their own ways, and probably because they're helping people. And when you're doing something you want to do, you are helping people. You're helping yourself. You're helping people. So maybe the link there is do something you want to do, either working or personally as a volunteer, and then you are managing your stress at the same time. I think I do get something of that. I think without knowing about it really. Again, most of these things we're unconscious about. Very few things do we make conscious decisions about. There are some out there who plan their whole lives. Well, good luck to you, you know. But equally, there are times when those plans go wrong and they will be exposed to the same pressures that everybody else is, that we are. And sometimes those pressures are different from that. But council, when you do something that comes to fruition and you know that is going to benefit the community, be that the whole community, that's really hard. It's particularly hard as a town councillor. The major powers lies in the county council, but crucially the government. We have few responsibilities, but even if you could help a little bit just by sorting someone's problem out, you know, privately, because they come to you as a councillor, and I've had that before as well. I've had some really quite concerning issues given to me by residents, by constituents, and I've sorted them out. This is what the MP does every single day. Tens and tens and tens of people are being helped by MPs all over the place. But, you know, that's rarely thought of. But that will give you pleasure. It will give you something that informs you about what you're doing. But the key word there is pleasure, passion, enjoyment, doing something that you want to do. And then any stresses there can be channeled into creativity, because that's where a lot of our creativity comes from. The personal stresses, let's word that differently. The stresses that come from trying to help people, from doing the things you love, and they are there, of course they are, you put yourself under pressure, is self-care. It's the things that you describe, the chaotic lives, the things that we can't control, that we often only realise when it comes into middle age. Those are the things that lead to the seemingly, I use that word carefully, seemingly avenues that we can access that can help you with those things you can't control. Yeah. And I think that's where particularly man health and other places where man, but equally men and women, you know, the facilities are there for all of us, but we are focusing on what we as men can do. So these things never existed before. So maybe the past 20, 10 years, however long it's been. But now they're there, and they're there with people who share your concerns, your worries, your neuroses, however you want to characterise them. These facilities are there. Man Health is one of those key ways of doing it. Access what you are most comfortable using. And if it's not the public services, which are better, but there's big queues, if it's not the traditional ways of doing things, if it's not by going for a swim, that's quite good for you as well, or the things that, you know, that other people do, then just go and talk to someone. And that is one of the sort of things. So for me, it's not a singular thing by being in public service that manages with stress, although I have volunteered for it. It's all of the other things that are available to you that are also available to me as well. You can make conscious efforts like you did, like I did. You made it, I don't know, maybe because of the stress you were feeling. Maybe that was an avenue you consciously decided you want to do as a strategy to do it, or just as a release. I don't think, so that is useful advice, and I've just taken that on board, but I think that most people don't consciously make decisions on that basis. Most people, things happen to them. And I think that if you are in an environment, be that at home watching this, or be that in a workplace, like you do, you know. Are you all right with me sort of coming in with you? Yeah. But I think whatever way that you can, as a man, access something that benefits you, volunteering, going for a walk, you know, listening to someone at work, jump at it if you can. Because if it resonates with you, if there's a bell that rings in your head that might help, well, don't leave it conditional as might, make it do. And men are actually really good at doing things. Do things for yourself as well as others. Or just, for yourself, you know, and that doesn't mean work. It doesn't necessarily mean your family. That's a really difficult call. But do things for yourself. One of the things I did used to say, oh God, I don't know how I'm coming across here, but I used to say in conversations to friends, I used to say, you can only love others if you love yourself first. And I think as a sort of maxim, that works. Whether I did that is another matter. But, you know, it came into my head because I looked around and thought, and maybe one of my dark moments, I definitely came out and thought, well, you know, maybe I heard it from something on the telly. You know, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter if I've uttered it. It doesn't matter if you've just heard it. It doesn't matter whether you heard it on the radio, you've watched telly, crap telly, you know, what's it called, real life telly, whatever, you know.
Reality TV.
Reality TV, God, that's awful. But if it comes to you from there, it doesn't matter if it resonates, jump in and see where you can go with it. Or find another place that it goes. You know, if you open up an avenue, other avenues open up to you as well. It's not linear necessarily. There's all sorts of different things. Because I'm sure that you, Kevin, and you, Chris, behind the camera, both have ways which you came to this, and they probably were not linear. They probably were offshoots from other things that you were doing.
Absolutely.
So just dive in there and take it, folks.
Stress and work-based stress, and I think it's something that most if not all, everyone watching this video will recognise. And when you're managing your own well-being through difficult times, it's the most natural thing, the most understandable thing in the world to step back and prioritise yourself and look internal and disconnect a little bit. It's the most natural thing in the world, I think, to step back. But for yourself, you step forward into a life of public service, so that's maybe like less standard. Is that fair to say?
I don't think it's standard. I think everyone does things that everyone tries to do things that for themselves that they maybe have not done before. Maybe that's one of the strategies we undertake. I mean, I've been through profound stress. There's no question about that, and that has definitely informed my access to mental health services. In fact, it was the first thing I had any contact with mental health service because I needed that help. Work were good initially in doing that, and I then self-referred over time. So my opening up about my mental health was definitely associated with stress, and definitely led me to places that were useful, were comforting, that were helpful. But the crucial thing that I did in any of those environments was talk. That was the bottom line. How that led, and it really was the bottom line, folks. If you ever have any doubts, just dive in if you can. If not, then just go and get a taster. Go read something about it. Don't deny yourself the possibility. It might not be for you, but the possibility of offloading or putting in a box or whatever works for your own mental health. Don't deny that possibility, because there are so many options out there. Even if you don't go to an organisation or a therapist, do as I may have said before, go for a walk, do something that makes you feel good. Has that led me to, as you put it, public service? And I think you're right, but I've never thought of it that way, and I very much doubt whether any of the counsellors who come into this chamber once a month, and some of them have been doing this for decades, I'm not sure they think about what they do as public service. I think maybe that moniker, that characterisation of it is something that others consider. That doesn't make it invalid. It just, it makes you think about, or me, who's not been doing it for that long, it makes me think, God, is that what I'm doing? Well, it probably is. Yeah. But I don't think that's what I think I do. And fine, the question I think is that has my experience of mental health issues, has that led to this? Yes and no. Yes, because I have had some weight taken from me. I do have a vestige of memories of my dad in particular going into public service, of giving something back to the community. So I think there is something in that. It also, I think there's an urgency. I'm 64, and that maybe is one of those things I've wanted to do, and the opportunity arose to do it. So you come to these things from all sorts of different routes, and I think it is related to my mental health, and it certainly has given me an opportunity to do things for people where that's possible. This is one of the myths about being a counsellor. You can't do everything, and there are certain responsibilities as a town councillor you have absolutely no influence on. But that's not the point, because you are trying to do things. So I think a release of some of the weight on your mind has given me an opportunity to volunteer. Every single councillor that you can't see in this room, but their name plaques have been removed, or all of the names on those boards, the chairmen of the council, the mayors of the council, all of those people were volunteers. All of them. Not one got paid. None of the people who are councillors now, or in my experience in this room as a councillor and chair, have ever claimed a single penny of expenses. We can, but not a single penny has been done. I can't speak for all of them. It was something that maybe was more common to do then. But, so we are volunteers, we don't get paid for it. Why do we do it? Because we want to try and give something. We just want to try and make the council work better for people. We want to make what we do, the parks, the properties. We own 43 bus stops. I didn't know that until the other day. Who would have thought that, Not the posh ones in the town squares, but anything brick. We own 2 toilet blocks. We, as I say, the parks. All of those things come out of taxpayers' money. So to manage those responsibly is vital. All of those things come into our remit. So I have had the benefit and the privilege of doing that. But then someone said, "Do you want to be mayor?" I said, "Well, as a mayor, And actually, one of the things I have learned to do in self-care is to say no. To say no and put my own physical, but crucially mental health, put that first And if that means getting out of a situation that is causing you overt stress, do it. If it's damaging your health, do it. It's not easy. It genuinely isn't easy to do that sometimes. But using that it's certainly given me the ability to do what I'm doing. But so they said to me, do you want to be mayor? And I said, well, I don't know. Can I walk away from it? They said yes. I said, okay, well, let me consider it. 6 months later, here I am. So I'm mayor of Ferryhill and I'm chair of Ferryhill Town Council. I probably should just say here very quickly that the mayor is a ceremonial role, mostly. You meet other mayors, you talk to them, you try and network, as they say, you try and get their ideas as to how things can be improved as a mayor. Think how we can improve things for the people of Ferryhill. Chair of the council leads the council, and that's not a ceremonial thing, although there is ceremony involved in that. And that's actually a bit more leadership of the council, but also trying to direct the things we do. Though I've embraced those things together, and I'm probably pushing a few boundaries as well, but I've embraced those things together. But crucially, you do get stress from doing this role, even as a volunteer. For me, the debates that we have had in chamber, they have been lively in the past, let's say, and the liveliness of them has been a bit of a surprise to me. But that hasn't affected me much. The thing that's affected me most personally, and I can't speak for other people in that regard, has been social media. And I don't think that is unique to the environment we're in. But as councillors, as mayors, as chair, but mostly as councillors, you're open to abuse and accusations that just aren't true. And social media has a way of getting inside you that other avenues don't, let's say. Face-to-face debates in a chamber, you can generally walk away from. Social media does get inside you. I have managed to manage that lately.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you, so do you think that it transcends so many things where the world, by definition, can be chaos? The outside world, to a lot of men that we see, they have chaotic lives. We can't always change what's going on in those chaotic lives, but what we can do is learn to cope and learn to deal with it better. Thanks, Angus. So you talked about stress, that work-based stress, and the stresses of everyday life, I suppose, whilst we're holding down careers and paying bills, and that's something that everyone will have knowledge of, and we see a lot of the men in our groups that are struggling with that, middle-aged men that have got work-based insecurities and things like that, but the stress is brought on by work. So for me, and certainly for the personal journey that I went on, I remember being advised that giving something back is a real good way of managing your own well-being, contributing to your community, giving something back, which I did and I do, and it does. For me, it absolutely works to feel like you're contributing and giving something back. But it does come with its own stresses as well, and getting that balance right is something that I've personally struggled with, and I just wonder with you and your story going into public service with the council and with the role as mayor, how do you balance those additional stresses that come with the role whilst managing your own well-being as well? I'm not sure if that's phrased that way.
You've explained it very well. You've given a sort of framework that I can definitely work with. Although I wish everything in life was by design. It's not. And we're given sort of strategies, methods to work to that certainly will lead us both into stress, but also into dealing with it and working what's best for you. Again, my story is not every man's story. Am I old now or am I middle-aged? I think the definition of middle-aged has expanded as life expectancy has expanded as well. So I am middle-aged, 64 middle-aged. So, yeah, I get it. I really do get it. I think I should say first, work-related stress, because that's what I was dealing with, is a killer. I'm going to be blunt. It really is. And I have not been immune to the worst thoughts. I've never ideated. I think that's the term, isn't it? But the worst thoughts of what you might do, what you might want to do. I think many of us have that. But I'm perfectly happy to say I have had those thoughts. I've never ideated. I'm repeating myself now, but whatever. But it does have a profound effect on you. There's no getting away from that. Because you've lived a life of ambition, you've lived a life of achievements, and then maybe that your ambitions have not been met. And that leads to a lot of reflection in yourself. And I think that was certainly one of the things that I was dealing with, although I wasn't hugely ambitious, I've got to be honest with you. My personal life was going reasonably, but work-related stress can come in many forms. It can come through pressure that is imposed upon you. I definitely had some of that. But pressure also that you put on yourself. The systems that we have or had certainly could work against you without any question. But what you take home from that, irrespective of the origin, is that stress, that worry, that concern, the everyday concerns that, as prices increase, your inability to meet those because of the position you are in your career, that your responsibilities increase, maybe through parenting. I became a parent at the age of 40, was I? 30? No, anyway, whatever. It was about then. Sorry, Finn. But they come in all sorts of they come from all sorts of places. But work-related stress, you take home. You most certainly you don't leave it when you leave the place that you work. And that's one of the issues of work-related stress, is that you do take it home. If you don't and you're still stressed, I'm sorry. But I can speak for me, and also the conversation I've had with other people going through it. How has that influenced me to do what I'm doing? Yes and no. I don't think I ever had the strategies that you have mentioned, but those things have worked for you and other people. I think where I came from, why am I mayor, and how do I sort of reconcile the stresses that do come with this? And they come from all sorts of places, different places than before. I think I go back, I go back to the seizures and my diagnosis as autistic. What the seizures definitely did, and I'm still having a journey through those, is actually they freed me up. They freed me up from the restrictions, restraints, the masks that I had developed over time, and allowed me to do things that I had maybe always wanted to do.
So we have groups of men that get together in communities across County Durham and slightly off the border as well, Chesterley Street and Hartlepool, which are great and we're really proud of. But I'm a Ferryhill boy. I'm Ferryhill born and bred. You're the mayor of Ferryhill. So how does all this sort of come together for the community of Ferryhill?
Yeah, I think. Thanks for asking that, and I think it's really important. I mean, I've you know what I've done. I've spoken at length about my own experience and what led me to this, and I thank you for that opportunity to spread not my wisdom, but certainly my opinion and experience to others. But I'm the mayor of Ferryhill, I'm the chair of the council, and I think what I just need to say is everything I've said about accessing mental health services. And other avenues for you to be a man and open up for maybe applies to Ferryhill. There is, we're a small community. We're a small town with its own problems and issues. It really, really does have its own problems and issues that we are trying to address as much as we can. And as mayor and leader of the council, then that certainly is one of my priorities. But what it boils down to is the people of Ferryhill. And about half of those people are men. And I know that there are existing organisations in Ferryhill. There's the Ladder Centre, which I know has a men's group. And that is a very, very good example of this. But also, man health is something that I would really, really badly want to see helping men in Ferryhill as well.
Angus, thank you. Thank you for being so open and honest with your story. The introduction at the start of these videos says that in the job that we do training nationwide, and we're really privileged to meet some people, and there are people that I just think whose story we should capture, and if they're willing to share it as you have been today, I think it's really powerful, and I think what you've said will resonate with a lot of men, with a lot of families, certainly with a lot of men that use our peer support groups. So on behalf of Man Health and the guys that use our group, thanks for being so honest and giving us an insight of your story and how you manage yourself, and so forthright with your journey, and all the hints and tips that you've given along the way that you've learned that will help people. So really grateful for that. I know you've got some events coming up to strengthen the bonds and connections and bring people together, so feel free to tell us about them.
Well, just, I mean, as a passive remark, before I do the adverts for my mayoral charities or whatever else, this has been actually a seminal experience for me, because I've never done this before. I am known for talking a lot when I get into certain circumstances, and I've certainly done that. And I will take positive things away from this as well, so it's been a good experience for me. And I'm glad to share, but there's plenty of other people you can share with out there as well. But yes, I'm the Mayor of Ferryhill. So I have got some events coming up, and this is where I would like men and women and families, where appropriate, to come and do our things. I've got two mayoral charities. I've got Little Treasures, who was set up locally but is now a County Durham wide organisation to support autistic young people and their parents as well. So that's one of my charities. And also Stray Aid. I'm a dog owner, lifelong dog owner, lifelong dog fan, and whatever else, for obvious reasons that I've got into. So Stray Aid is my other charity as well. This comes together in the events that we have, and the next one is on November the 22nd, where the local and regional, and soon to be national, I think, 80s tribute band called Rio. Her name is Rio. Anyway, that's about appalling, isn't it? Well, keep it in just because it's rubbish. But no, they'll do a lot of Duran Duran and all sorts of things. But they are appearing at the Ferryhill Working Men's Club across the road from here on the 22nd of November 2025. £5 to get in, be there or be square. But all proceeds will go to my charities, so it's a good thing as well. Keep yourselves watching, please, for anything else that comes up. It'll certainly be on local media and the local press as well. But again, listen, Chris behind the camera and Kev, thank you. And anything else I can do to help, I'll be more than happy to do so, even when I'm not mayor.
Gentlemen.
Pleasure. Total pleasure. Chris as well.
Thank you.
It's a total pleasure.